Welcome back. So today we've got a really fascinating explainer lined up for you. We're going to unpack this powerful moral story that directly challenges a bias, well, a bias pretty much all of us carry whether we realize it or not. I'm talking about how we assign value to the people around us. You know how it is, right? We get so caught up in titles, hierarchies, who has the corner office, that we just completely overlook the human beings keeping the actual foundation intact. And today's source material, it explores exactly what happens when that foundation becomes literally the only thing keeping you alive.
Okay, let's dive into this. The quote reads, "Everyone laughed at the old janitor until one day he saved the richest man in the city." Now, that is a classic hook, right? It perfectly sets up this high-stakes reversal of fortune. We live in a society that so often equates wealth with worth and menial labor with, well, insignificance. But in this narrative, that whole power dynamic gets flipped completely on its head. It really asks us to imagine a scenario where the person society deems the absolute least important suddenly holds the fate of the most powerful person in the room right in the palm of their hands.
So moving right into Section 1, The Invisible Man. Subtitle here is The Daily Life of Mr. Thomas.
All right, so our story kicks off on a freezing cold Monday morning in New York City. We meet Mr. Thomas. He's quietly cleaning the floors, emptying the trash, and greeting literally everyone he crosses paths with using this warm, genuine smile. But in this hyper-busy corporate ecosystem, he's basically treated like a particularly polite potted plant, just virtually invisible. Look at this contrast here. On one side, his coworkers don't just ignore him, they actively mock him. And on the flip side, Mr. Thomas never argues back. He doesn't let their arrogance drag him down. He simply smiles and just keeps doing his job. It's this incredible visual of unshakable humility staring right in the face of dismissive arrogance.
Just look at that text, "You're just a janitor." It's honestly incredible how much damage 5 little words can do. This phrase really establishes the baseline for the workplace dynamics we're exploring in this explainer. It shows us how terrifyingly fast society can dismiss someone's humanity based entirely on their job title. They weren't seeing Mr. Thomas the person, you know? They were only seeing a uniform and a broom. But, as we're about to see, character is absolutely not defined by a paycheck.
Which brings us to Section 2, The Spark of Crisis. A rainy evening in the office.
Now that bustling corporate environment we just talked about, it is completely empty. It's a rainy evening, almost everyone has gone home for the night, except for the CEO, David Carter, who's working late in his office, and Mr. Thomas, who's just doing his regular rounds. Then, suddenly, Mr. Thomas smells something burning, and he doesn't just ignore it. He actively investigates, traces the scent down to the electrical room, and sees smoke. Without wasting a single second, he pulls the fire alarm and sprints straight toward the CEO's office. And literally moments later, boom! That electrical room completely explodes. But right before that massive explosion, we get this incredibly desperate moment. Mr. Thomas bursts into David Carter's office shouting, "Sir, we need to leave now." Just think about the sheer courage that takes for a second. The guy who gets constantly belittled, the one told he's just a janitor, is now putting himself at extreme personal risk. He's taking proactive, urgent action to save the very man at the top of the food chain, the guy presiding over that toxic culture.
And how exactly does the CEO respond to this frantic life-or-death warning? "I'm busy." Seriously? No way. It is just a stunning display of blindness. But actually, it's a well-documented psychological phenomenon. People in positions of extreme power often suffer from empathy deficits, or they get this intense tunnel vision. David Carter was so insulated by his own importance and, whatever glowing spreadsheet was on his screen that you couldn't even recognize a mortal threat screaming right in his face. His initial annoyance just perfectly highlights how totally disconnected he was from his surroundings and from the very person trying to save his life.
But Mr. Thomas, he insisted. He absolutely wouldn't take no for an answer. And thank goodness he didn't, because mere seconds later came that massive explosion, and the hallway completely filled with thick, blinding smoke. The source text makes this terrifying reality super clear. If they had waited even one more minute, David Carter would have been trapped. The window for survival was just unbelievably narrow. Even though the firefighters arrived really quickly to get the blaze under control, it would have been way too late for the CEO if Mr. Thomas hadn't literally forced him out of that chair.
All right, on to Section 3, The Aftermath. The morning after the fire.
So, the physical fire has been put out, but a totally different kind of shockwave is spreading through the entire company. The old janitor, the guy they all laughed at, had just saved the CEO's life. David Carter calls a massive company-wide meeting. He stands up there in front of every single employee, and he delivers this incredibly powerful realization. He says, "Yesterday, the person everyone ignored became the reason I'm alive today."
He actually says this publicly. He doesn't try to hide it. He doesn't try to take credit for his own survival. He forces his entire workforce to look right in the mirror and confront the reality of their own arrogance.
And the crucial point here is that this wasn't just, empty corporate PR talk. There were real, highly tangible results from this whole epiphany. As you can see, David Carter turned to Mr. Thomas and promoted him right then and there to safety supervisor, doubling his salary right on the spot. But honestly, perhaps the most important takeaway here, Mr. Thomas gained immediate, company-wide respect. The very same employees who once laughed at him were now forced to look at him with the reverence he had honestly always deserved.
But for me, this is the most beautiful detail of this entire explainer. Look at these words: kind, humble, always smiling. Because despite this massive leap in status, despite getting double the salary and all this newfound respect from every single peer, Mr. Thomas stayed exactly the same. His core character didn't change one bit because, well, his character was never dependent on his job title in the first place. He was always this man. Society just finally had to open its eyes to actually see him.
Which brings us to our final section, the moral of the story, finding true value.
Now it's time to take this corporate parable and apply it to our own lives. Because while, this is a dramatic story about a fire and an explosion, the underlying theme is something we interact with every single day. Think about when we pass the barista, the delivery driver, or the cleaning staff in our own offices. During his speech to the company, David Carter delivered what is basically the ultimate thesis of our explainer today. A person's job does not decide their value. We absolutely have to stop conflating what someone does to pay their bills with who they are as a human being. The title on a business card is definitely not a measure of a person's soul.
And this brilliantly illustrates our core takeaway today. As defined here, true greatness is a quality derived entirely from an individual's character, kindness, and actions, completely independent of their social or professional status. Mr. Thomas was great when he was holding a broom, and he was just as great when he was holding a clipboard as a safety supervisor. The greatness was always in him, not in the job.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want you to genuinely ask yourself, who is the Mr. Thomas in your life that you might be overlooking? Who's the person doing all the quiet, unglamorous work around you, greeting you with a smile, while you just rush past them because you're too busy? Take a moment today to actually see them. Let's make it a point to respect everyone we meet, because you really never know where true greatness is quietly working away. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.